Now, the working age population in Sub-Saharan Africa is expected to more than double by 2050 to become the largest in the world. S&P Global Ratings estimates that growth in the working age population will add 3 percentage points to the average annual GDP growth for the next 10 years across key economies in the subcontinent. This comes as countries in Sub-Saharan Africa are now experiencing the most significant demographic transition in their history. All right, let's dig into the report. Satyam Pandey is the S&P's Global Ratings senior economist. He joins us via Zoom from San Francisco in the US. Mr. Pandey, thank you very much for joining us. So this report obviously contains good news for the region. Are the countries involved well prepared to reap the benefits of this demographic transition?
Thanks for having me. In certain ways, given where the countries are in their economic income level, I would say that they have improved quite a bit in their capabilities in being able to sort of, get the dividends from this demographic transitions that we will see in the next 50 to 60 years. It's going to be a long process. And in the last 10 years or so, I would say the region, even though there is some variation, has become more open to trade. Some of the government borrowing has been more restrained, at least until the COVID environment came upon us. And also the central bank reform in many of the main countries have led to inflation being a little more range bound at reasonable levels. So all of those together gives me hope that they are moving in the right direction in getting ready for these demographic dividends. Nonetheless, I would point out that it is still vulnerable to some of the regular issues coming from the famine, political strifes, climate change, and the pandemic like we just saw last year, and this year it continues.
All right, so you point out in that report two major factors, among others, of course, that could help the region capture this dividend. One is access to high quality education, and the second is creation of formal sector employment. So where is the region on that?
Those both go hand in hand, access to quality education and formal work level employment. Right now, when we compare the sub-Saharan region with the comparable other countries of the same income level, I think most of the labor market indicators are on par, but it's the youth unemployment that's lagging a bit behind. That's the medium to larger, longer term challenge for sub-Saharan African countries. There seems to be three reasons. There's a high leakage in the early stages of education cycle per person. So this issue from youth transitioning from your school level age to an employment level age in the labor market seems to be, there's been a long gap. That's what the data shows. And also there's been less uptake in the vocational education to gain the skills necessary for both informal and formal job market. So that's where some of the things could be made even better in terms of just the youth unemployment and the skills that is required for this kind of transition.
Okay, so having said all of that, what are some of the policies countries can implement to help maximize the demographic dividend?
Whenever it comes to maximizing demographic dividends, you have to look in a more broad lens. And one thing that really comes into mind is women's participation rate. I think some of the policies that eliminate marriages before 18, childbirth before 18, just in general, obstacles for women to join the labor force should be minimized. Besides that, a lot of the diversified nature of growth should be in mind rather than just relying on one commodity related growth cycle or so. In those manner, I think policy should be more focused. But again, I would certainly stress that we should not forget the informal sector as well, because at this stage of development in most of the countries, there's a large share of informal sector, and we should pay attention to the informal sector as well, the small and medium, medium-sized family farms and firms, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about the informal sector because obviously, like you said, it's where the majority of the population in this region ends up. But then if you were to talk about achieving this growth, which sectors do you see providing the most opportunities for job creation?
I think at the end of the day, you have to try to look for ways to tap into the global trade and investment value chain. And for that, given some of the foundational aspects, the quality education and technology infrastructure, that you probably should have some investments going into those sectors, but at the same time, be able to tap into those growth value chains across the borders. And some of the network effects itself, folks that migrate out of the region to somewhere else, and then they either come back or they actually share some of the knowledge, some of the skills, and those kinds of network effect has to be in play. And most of those tend to happen more in the productivity generating sectors such as manufacturing and services of high-tech types.
All right, Sachin Pandit, thank you very much for your time.